I don't remember who told me this, but it's exactly right. You will start being, you'll start teaching like some of those people you admire. It could have been a high school director, it could have been a college director, and you'll try to emulate them. And then slowly you develop your own style. Be that person and go with your instincts, because um, usually those instincts are pretty good.
Welcome to MBA Podium Masters, conversations with master teachers in the field of band and music education. This series of interviews seeks to provide insight and tips of the trade from outstanding educators in Missouri, educators who've enjoyed success in leading outstanding programs in our state. Your host for this series is Ann Goodwin Clark, who is a former MBA president, All-State Band Coordinator, and current co-historian.
I am fortunate to be joined today by Larry Bennett, who is a gentleman's gentleman in our business, one of the true great musicians and master teachers that I've ever had the pleasure to come across, and anyone in our state would agree. Larry was a Central Methodist. Maybe it was Central College at the time, or was it Central Methodist when you graduated?
Central College, Central Methodist College. Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's Central CMC grad. Upon graduating from there, you took the job at Salisbury and were there for 4 years. And then the bulk of your career, and where so many of us have such fond memories of your band's performance, would be the Macon Bands for 27 years. And upon your retirement there, you got involved again with your alma mater at Central Methodist, and were low brass instructor, have done some conducting classes, brass techniques classes, percussion techniques classes. So passing on to that next generation. Also were the interim director of bands there in 2001, 2002, is that right?
That was at the University of Missouri. My first
Okay.
year of retirement.
Okay.
Dale Lonis had just left the University of Missouri. And so John Patterson and I helped fill in. It was a difficult year for the university, trying to find
Sure.
people to cover everything, having enough directors for bands. So he and I filled in the 2001, 2002 academic year.
That would be the all-star lineup of conductors, John Patterson and Larry Bennett, that's for sure. And then 2007-08, then you were interim at Central Methodist. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
And honors and awards, of course, your bands performed at MMEA. How many times, Larry?
5 times.
5 times? Just 5? No, yeah.
Just 5.
Well, I remember a good portion of those. They're among the highlight performances I got to sit in on. I would imagine most of us who heard them feel the same way. But you were, in '95, you were named the Outstanding Band Director Award through Phi Beta Mu, their Charles Emmons Award. Missouri Association of Jazz Educators, you were named the Outstanding Jazz Educator in 2013. Of course, our own MBA Hall of Fame award was granted to you in 2002, MMEA Hall of Fame 2013, and named a Distinguished Alumni from Central Methodist University in 2010. So, wow. Sorry, Larry, our time is up on this interview.
Okay, well, nice talking to you, Ann.
What got you into the business of music education and specifically being a band director?
I've shared this with my classes when I was teaching at CMU. As you can see in the background, we have a cat that may steal the show. He's my buddy, so I'm in my upstairs office at my home, and so you can see this is where I do my trombone practice. The cat comes with me. He doesn't enjoy the trombone practice. He leaves
Okay.
at that point. But when I'm doing work on the computer or balancing the checkbook or whatever I'm doing, here comes the cat, and that's his spot. So
And what is your cat's
hopefully,
name?
the cat's name is Tux.
Tux.
He's
Okay.
a tuxedo cat. He's a black cat with a white front. So we named him
Yeah.
Tux. We only had him about 6 weeks. Janet had a former student that it wasn't working out for her. She was a student at Mizzou and working toward her wants to be in law school. So she was getting ready to take the test, and the cat was constantly on her lap and bothering her. And so we inherited a cat about 6 weeks ago, and we've grown to think a lot of the cat in a short time. This
Well,
as
and
animals kind of worm their way into your heart pretty quickly.
good of the cat to come in for.
Anyway, getting back to what when I was a student, the two things that I grew up on a farm, small farm, and the two things that were at the top of my list, one was a veterinary. Loved taking care of animals. We had registered Angus cattle, and I showed cattle as a kid. My classes go, no, you didn't. I said, oh, yes, I did. And some of the kids were really, I thought maybe you grew up in the city. I said, no, I grew up in Shelbyville, Missouri, a little tiny town out in the middle, literally, of North Shelby. I went to high school there. I mean, it's the cornfield right on either side of the school. So when I say we grew up in Cornfield County, yes, we did. But I liked playing in band. I wasn't an all-state player. But I took solos to contests, that kind of thing. I really enjoyed band. And my director, John McCartney, he was a CMU grad, Central College at that time. And he kept, whispering in my ear, this is something you ought to consider. You ought to consider music education. So finally, my senior year, the Central Band played at our little school on tour, and Ken Seward was the director at Central at that time, and they kind of set the hook. The trombone soloist, his name is John Seaburn. He played solo with the band, and that kind of set the hook. I went, that's what I want to do. I want to study with somebody that can help me learn to play at that level. That's what, and so I started the journey, and so that's where I started from.
Who would have been the director of bands at Central when you were in school?
I had 3 different directors in 4 years. Ken Seward was the director of bands the year before I came. He was only there 2 years, and then his second year was my first year. Then Joseph Labuda was Dr. Joseph Labuda was my band director during my sophomore year, and he only served Central for 1 year. Then he went to Wayne State and had a very distinguished career at Wayne State University.
He wrote one of the books that I used in undergraduate work.
Exactly. And it was a tough year for him. He was a very, very bright man, a great guy. But the students at Central didn't really give him a chance. He wasn't as popular as he'd hoped he would have been. And in retrospect, I think we all wish we had a do-over, because he's a really great guy and a brilliant mind. But it didn't work out all that well. And then my junior and senior years, Paul Montemurro was the director at Central.
Sure.
And grew to love him, although it's like so many people, we had our we had our ups and downs. He's a fiery man, a lot of passion, and sometimes that exploded. But after my days at Central, we became very good friends, and certainly he's one of my mentors.
So during that time, then,
all those gentlemen were mentors, in their way. Ken was the one who he was a taskmaster, and I know him in band, and there was no fooling around whatsoever in a band rehearsal. I mean, you learn rehearsal etiquette really quickly. If you came from high school where it was a little loose, you figured out, this isn't going to be that way now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then I had him for private lessons, and that's what started me towards that. I've got to take things a little more. I've got to take things way more seriously, and become. I'm not serious enough. I've got to step my game up. So
Yeah.
Ken, Joe Labuda, Paul Montemuro, all of whom I consider mentors, and then John McCartney, was my high school director and pushed me in that direction. And then while we're here, a lady, I always tell my classes, I wouldn't be standing in front of you were it not for this lady who started me on my trombone when I was in the 4th grade. Her name was Wilma Williams, and she was a wonderful musician here in Shelbyville, Missouri, of all places, Shelbyville schools, teaching everything. That was before there was a North Shelby school, and loved that woman. I mean, she was the music. She was the Howard Hill of Shelbyville, Missouri. She did everything, and so encouraging. And probably as a kid,
she was your first band director then.
my first band director,
Okay.
my music, and had her in elementary music, and so I probably did just as much, if not more, singing. I mean, people go, really? But I did a lot of singing when I was a kid. A lot of quartets, a lot of trios, a lot of singing in church choir, a lot of those things that really do help you with your ear. That
Did you sing then? Did you sing at Central?
No, not that much. Just in chapel choir, but I didn't sing. It was really difficult. It was set up. Now you could sing in the touring choir, and you can sing in the concert band, and you can do both things. But at that time, they met at the same time, and you had to choose one or the other, and so. Well,
Central, of course, as I don't think I'm biased here to say, has much of the heritage of music education in our state can lead back to Fayette and Central. And certainly for you to be there during a time when there was a changeover in directors, it wasn't consistent, but boy, you had some powerhouse people that you encountered even in those kind of that turnover. Who were some of your contemporaries at Central? Some of the people that were in school with you that went on to be directors?
Lyle Moore was a wonderful musician. Taught at Fulton for a time. They probably where people know him. And that's been a lot of years now. People may not know Lyle,
That's hard to believe. It's been
all that well, but he was a wonderful musician and a good friend. When I was at Salisbury, he was at Glasgow, Missouri. We were both started out in small schools. And we would visit on occasion, and very, very supportive. Bob Hansen was he's much older than I am, 1 or 2 years, whatever it is now. Good friends, been friends, since college days.
Sure.
One of my best friends, John Giddens, is a director in Lilburn, Missouri at oh my goodness, New Madrid Central School, high school, I believe it's known now, when they finally consolidated. Margaret Kuhn is a very good friend of ours, but I don't think Margaret Colligan now, I don't think you would know her, but she was a wonderful musician, good friend. And Tom O'Rear. Let's see.
So it was a fertile soil for great.
Well, I'm leaving so many people out, and when I probably listen back to this recording, I'll be embarrassed because I left this person out and this person out and this person out.
It's difficult to name everyone, I know, but certainly the culture there at Central was such that success was the norm. And
John Cherry, another one, a very good friend
sure.
in the trombone trombone section. See, he would let me know about that I forgot. I've already forgotten him. So sorry, John.
Well, let's hope that they don't feel left out. Talk about your first. So you finished at Central, and then you're at Salisbury. You're all equipped to go out and conquer the world. Talk about those first years and what you learned, and what you maybe didn't know.
What I didn't know when I started out, I recall vividly, and I've told this in my classes. We think when we first graduate, we have a mistaken impression of how much we know. And my first summer was the summer when that was actually when what had been set up. That's when we started the students. It was in the summertime, the beginning students. So I had beginning band classes. I mean, it was literally graduate, pack. Janet and I had just gotten married before the end of school, which you know, you look back and go, what was I? What were we thinking?
Some stressors there, yeah.
So we packed our stuff, moved to Salisbury, and I think literally 2 or 3 weeks out of graduation, here I was teaching beginning band. Like instrument, it was set up beautifully. Pat Rippetto was the director there, and I probably don't know that name now. She's a really good teacher, and she went on to Hannibal and became an assistant director there. And I interviewed for the job and got and was a successful candidate for her job at Salisbury. What I didn't know was how to teach all of those beginners what to do. I thought I did. I was, you being a flute player, I am the world's worst flute player. I am horrid. And I had to learn how to teach flute, even though I didn't play it very well at all. I had to learn how to teach it. And I became respectable, but never ever would I think I'm a great flute teacher. I'm not, but I can help people get started. I can show them what to do. And I was literally 1 page ahead of them in the book. I would see the students, go home and study, you know, look in my book and make sure I was ready for the next class. And so it went. Mm-hmm. So I became a much better teacher because I had to become, wow, you know, these beginners, if they're getting the upper hand here, I better learn. I should have paid even more attention in my methods classes. That's the thing I learned probably first.
That's the first thing we realize.
The next thing you learn is how difficult teaching students really is. You think this is what I want to do, and you're all hyped up, and then maintaining the order in the class, picking the literature, passing, you know, how do we deal with band uniforms? Just getting what? Oh, so I see. What do we play at contest? How do you figure that out? What do we do here? Oh my God! And then all of a sudden you figure, oh, it's contest day. Oh my goodness! And then you have you have the normal things that you have to deal with. Somebody being sick or somebody having a poor excuse for not being there. And you deal with all that stuff, and we received a 1 rating, and I was over the moon because I thought, wow, I don't know whether I can do this or not. Are they good enough? I don't know. And actually left a measure out at the end of this piece where it was one of those repeated dom, da-dum, da-dum, and we went dum, da-dum. And the band went.
That's a better ending anyway.
And I went, oh, it's over. We'll get a 3 or whatever. And
you remember what you played? What did the band play? Now I put you on the spot.
It's something by Houston Bright. Prelude and Fugue, or Prelude. I think Prelude and Fugue was the name of the piece. And as I recall, Clifton Williams, what is
Variation Overture, or
no, but be that as it may,
right.
It all went better than we rehearsed diligently, but
Yeah.
from all those folks that I'd had at Central, unless you were just asleep in rehearsal, you learned a lot of rehearsal techniques from those fellows.
Yes. Yes.
Even though we all could have learned more, but you learn how to do things, how to get things worked out. And I learned that I knew that early on, that having sectional rehearsals as an adjunct to the band program, that's just the way I was going to do things.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the resistance. Oh, we'd never done that. So having sectional rehearsals and having students show up, oh, that was a chore.
This was
They,
before school, after school.
yes.
All of that.
Usually at that time after school.
Mm-hmm.
But oh my, the complaining and the phone calls
Yeah.
but I thought, this all hits you about contest time. What about all this extra work and all this attention to detail and me being Mr. Picky? What if we get a 3 or a 2 and it really doesn't show that we've really done this hard work? What do I do now? How do I back? Well, it all turned out well, and then it just became more of this is the way we do things under the Bennett regime.
Sure. Did you
And
know, Larry, that raises a great question, just about the chase for excellence. Did you always know when your band was sounding good, or were you, I mean, you have to be critical in order to improve, or did you have to step back away to believe that it was sounding good, or were you just always finding something new to work on? How did you establish that that you felt like, okay, we're ready to perform?
there's a point in time, at least this is with me, when you're preparing for contest, and it hopefully happens in your mind. You learn this over the years. It's that week before you go to festival. Sometime during that week, this happened more when I was at Macon than at Salisbury. But I learned this in student teaching, and I taught with a fellow whose name is John Seaburn. John's a couple years older, another Central fellow. And at the time when I did my student teaching, he was teaching at West Strand High School, which is west of Moberly. And he ended up teaching his career in Texas. He was a great director, was and is a great director. And I learned that during the week you work on pieces, and generally you aren't really doing run-throughs. You're working on this section, work on this section, now let's go back and let's do this. You're sectionalizing the piece and trying to get the problems worked out. Then on Fridays was run-through day. That just kind of, I learned that from John, and lots of directors do something in a similar manner.
Mm-hmm.
But where I really step it up is that week before contest. You think, I'd like to have some run-throughs where we knock it out of the park. In our hearts, bands and directors know. I mean, when it's coming around and you're playing at a fairly high level, you said, folks, if we don't do something really dumb the day of contest, I think we're going to do really well. Nobody can ever promise you're going to get a 1 rating. You just can't do that. It's just not being truthful.
Right.
But if we don't do something silly, it should be a 1 rating, or it'll be the best 2. It'll be the strongest 2 that's ever been given. But that's what I'd aim for, is that run through where we look at each other and go, wow.
Yeah.
Did
you find sometimes
that's pretty darn good, wasn't it, guys?
Did you find sometimes that when your memory of that particular band and that performance, the one that sticks with you is not necessarily the one that was on stage, but it was the first time where you hit that, wow, guys, that was it, in rehearsal? Yeah.
When we were preparing for one of our MBA performances, and I remember the year because it was 1994, and we were doing a rehearsal over Christmas break and getting people to come in on Christmas break. that was a chore. But nonetheless, we were in the band room, and I had probably, that was the, if not the best band, certainly one of the best bands I ever had when I was at Macon. It was just unheard of, 10 kids in all-state band out of a little school in the middle of nowhere. Are you kidding? Come on. But I was first chair horn, first chair percussion, and second chair.
The percussionist was your son, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Right.
First chair horn player. She is the professor of horn now at the Western Michigan University, has a doctorate in horn performance. And so it went. I mean, we had clarinet players, we had trumpet players in the all-state band. It was just, it was a really talented group. So we were in the band room rehearsing and the lights went out. I mean, just literally the electricity went off. And I said, let's try something, guy. Let's see if we can play these pieces without, do you have them memorized? Let's find out.
They played the program.
They played the program.
Oh my gosh. That had to be
a part of the program. I don't, my memory fails after all these years. That's a long time ago. But I went, my goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness, folks. Isn't that something? They're really, we were all really proud of ourselves because did I have the program memorized,
Wow.
And it was, but I remember that.
Oh,
and you remember those, but you're exactly right. You remember those rehearsals that they're more, it comes back to you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Remembering doing a performance at contest one time, we were on the Baldwin Hall stage, and we turned around. It was a nice performance. They played really well, and seeing my mother and sister in the front row, and it got to me. I may break down right now, but I've just lost it. Yeah. And we went into sight read after that, and I was still crying. And the band said, "Did we do horribly?" I said, "No, you did really, really well." Yeah. I said, "I've got to pull myself together now and let's sight read." And then I don't have time to be emotional right now. But seeing them, seeing them, seeing me doing what, doing my thing. Right. It didn't happen that often, so that was really a special moment as well.
And those moments mean more than any one rating could ever mean, I'm sure. Yeah. Although you'll take the one too.
Yeah, true. You always work toward top ratings. That was one of our, it became, I think, directors that have been in a similar situation can understand after, when you're striving, getting a 1 rating is kind of, this is where we're aiming. This is where we want our band to be. This is where we want this performance to be. And then once you establish a tradition, it becomes almost an albatross. You go, oh, is this the band that isn't going to quite make it? It's not a really bad band, but it just isn't as strong. Yeah. And I remember Bill Mack saying one time after, he was one of my judges, and I won't use the language we use because Bill and I both got a little salty. He saw me later and said, Bennett, I don't think that band is as good as the band last year. And I said, no, blank. I said, no. I said, Bill, it was just a chore from beginning to end. That band just didn't play as well. Never did, never will. Lost some really key people. It wasn't a bad band, but it was lacking a few elements that we were just merely a good band. We weren't a great band. And
you may have done your best teaching work in that year. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. The first trombone player was sick that day. Oh. And the second trombone player had just key moments. And I'd look in his direction and say, okay, look at me, buddy. That eye contact is going to get us through that. He never looked up. Never.
Too scared.
And he was scared to death.
Oh, yeah.
He was just scared to death. And
he didn't want to let you down.
Yeah. But Yeah, that
What
special.
what years were you at Macon? Of course, you were at Salisbury for the 4
I
years. What were
started in
you
2004 and I finished in, no,
started in
no, let's try that again. I started in 1974
74?
and I finished in 2001. So
In
27 years.
in that 27 years, describe what you would say was your overarching philosophy of your program at Macon during that time.
Well, what I would say and what students might say, we might not quite agree. What I remember, it was my last band banquet, and I was just reading through some notes in preparation, and I thought, I think that I'd say the same thing. I would say to them, you need to dare to dream. It's hard sometimes to have the guts, I guess, intestinal fortitude to say, you know, to tell a bunch of high school kids in a small school,
Yeah.
we're going to play this piece and we're going to play it at this level at music festival, and have the tenacity and the temerity to say, we're going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back and I go, I remember sitting by, it might have been your brother David, but we were sitting, oh, they're going to play Festive Overture. Oh my goodness. Sitting at a concert. Oh, I love that piece. And I said, isn't that terrific? I said, I remember taking this to music festival. And they looked at me and said, you're kidding me. I said, no, we took this to contest.
Yeah.
At Macon? Yeah.
Yeah.
The clarinet solo and everything. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy cow, how did you do that? And I look back and I said, I don't know. When I listened to that piece, I go, good Lord, how did we do that?
You raised that bar for
But
your
we
kids.
dared to dream.
What
And
was
so,
some of the other repertoire through the years, Larry,
let's see. La Forza del Destino,
Mhm.
we
I
do
remember
that.
you did the liturgical dances one year at MMEA.
We played liturgical dances at MMEA. That group that I was talking about, we did liturgical dances.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do we do some of those things? And again, sectional rehearsals, a lot of kind of getting back to your point, but if you dare to dream, that's one thing, but then you back that up. There's what you don't see behind the scenes is still sectional rehearsals. Every student was involved in a sectional rehearsal of some sort. Sometimes it might have been clarinets by themselves. Sometimes it might have been flutes by themselves. Sometimes it might have been woodwind section together. Could have been low brass, low reeds. Could have been percussion. Bringing in a percussion specialist to work with the percussion. And then private lessons. Gerald Sandbothy was, people don't know who Gerald Sandbothy is. Lots of younger don't know who that is, but he was an MMEA president many years ago. I mean, he was a who's who in his time.
I have to
And
real
he was
quickly share that while I was in graduate school in Bowling Green, Ohio, at Bowling Green State, Mark Kelly was the teacher there, and he had been at Centerville, Iowa. That was his hometown, and he taught band there for many years. And he knew Gerald Sandbothy very well,
Sure.
and he was a clarinet player, and always spoke so highly of Gerald Sandbothy.
I learned more. Well, I won't say learn more, but I learned immense amount about what to do with clarinet sections, how to help students play clarinet. And again, I'm flute player, clarinet player. Oh my goodness, I'm not great at all. I'm very, very average, but I know what I need to listen for. How do you approach that? What exercises do you work on to help them? He told me I'm going to help you become a really good clarinet and flute and woodwind teacher. And so after band rehearsal, I had the luxury of going into his office, and we think of Tom Price of being, one of the gurus of clarinet in the state of Missouri. Well, at that time, there was also Jerry Sandbath, who was also known as a wonderful, wonderful clarinet teacher. And here I have this luxury after concert band rehearsals. I go into his office and he would debrief me before he'd start the next class and say, now, what did you miss that time? Well, he said, no, what do you need to do to make that better?
And had he been the band director
here's
there?
What you need. I'm sorry?
Had he been the director of bands at Macon when you came in?
He had, right.
Okay.
He'd been the director of, oh, geez. When he finally retired, he'd been there 40 years.
Wow.
So we were probably about 25 years in at the time, because I think we taught together, memory serves, 15, 16 years together.
And he served as your assistant, kind of?
He suffered an almost fatal heart attack, a very, very serious heart attack. And so he stepped down. They had another fellow came in. I think he was there 2 years, and then I came in after that fella. And he really, we were talking about mentors. He's one of my mentors. He became just, there's my dad, and then there's Jerry. Gerald Sandbath. I mean, he's that important in my life. I mean, just loved him, still love him. That never goes away. Love the man. But
what year did he pass away?
Early 90s, in that neighborhood right there.
Yeah. So then you hired another assistant at that point?
Brian Clark.
Okay.
Brian is now an elementary principal in the Fox School District,
okay.
On Arnold, that area. We touched base at Christmas time, but he was working toward his master's degree in education and in what's the term? Education specialty.
Okay.
Being an administrator.
Okay.
During going to Mizzou and his time at Macon, and we knew it was a matter of time that he was going to move on. He wanted to move on into elementary, and and then Paul Fleege, the last, I guess we taught ago 2 or 3 years, and Paul was, people now know who Paul Fleege is. At that time, who's that? They didn't know, but he was just extraordinarily promising, and we got along really well, and I knew he was going to be a big star. Just the way he approached things, the way he does things, just how brilliant his mind is, and he has a teaching mind. He has this ability to see things through a student's mind and what makes sense to them. A unique ability. I remember asking one time after a silent band rehearsal, said, and these are beginners, come in, I mean, you can hear a pin drop. They come in, sit down.
Yeah.
Whole rehearsal, 30 minutes with beginners.
And afterwards, they probably loved it. They loved it, I'm sure.
Then when it was finally over, he went,
wow.
30 minutes, dead silence. Wow. Beginners, 10-year-olds. So I said, how did you learn, you didn't learn that from me. Did you learn that from student teaching? No. Did you learn that from Joe Deeker then? Because he went to Culver. No. So, well, you weren't, and then get this, he didn't even play in the high school band when he was a kid.
Oh my goodness.
He was so bad that he didn't play his clarinet. He played through 8th grade and didn't play in high school. When he got to college, he picked up the clarinet again.
Oh, wow.
Is that a smart guy or what?
That's a smart guy.
Anyway, he says, oh, I just made it up. And I said, what? He
Yeah.
said, well, I figured what'd be interesting to a little guy. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's Paul.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
he's just that great a teacher. I mean, he just gets it.
Yeah.
He knows a way to get through to students.
And it's about the kids and not about Paul.
Sure.
And I'm sure that's how your
He,
program
you
functioned
know,
at Macon as
when
well.
his career is finished, he will have award after award after award after award after award. And it was, never about me. Whenever he talks, he talks about himself. He
Right.
talks about this student or that student, or what made sense, how we got.
Yeah.
That's the greatness of people. They don't talk about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so your curriculum at Macon, how did you have it structured, and what was important to you? What was the main, that's uh, in your marching, jazz, symphonic band, chamber music, how did you have all that organized?
Um, well, we're starting to begin. One thing about being responsible for an entire band program, from time to time, I would interview for a position at a larger school. We tend to get that bigger is better thing going on. And so, without naming names, interviewed for jobs in bigger places in the St. Louis area, Kansas City area. I think, this will tell everybody I have arrived. And so, being who I am, I would go early and I would find where the elementary school was or the middle school was, and I would go watch the people with whom I'm going to be working teach. And I remember one job interview in particular, the principal and I were getting along really well, and we could just tell, if we can figure this out, we want you to come here. And I said, okay, can I bring my people in to teach?
Just
And
like
he
Nick
said,
Saban does.
it doesn't work that way.
Oh
I
my.
said, well,
Yeah.
I'm afraid the answer is no, because the way things are structured presently, by the time when that student gets to high school, they're not going to know what my students know in my little school where I'm presently teaching. And so I'm going to have to go back and reteach and unteach, if you will. And the situation isn't going to work. And he said, maybe at some point, but he said, we just can't give somebody the boot after, 25
Right.
years. And he said, that isn't fair to them. And he's right. In retrospect, I was younger and
Right.
full of vim and vinegar and,
Yeah.
but anyway, get back to my point. Beginning band was every day. And that was 5th grade. 6th grade band was every day. 7th grade band was every day.
Were they in homogeneous groups or heterogeneous groups?
We were all together.
Okay.
And we would from time to time break them apart. But Macon being a small school, there wasn't the facility. If you've ever been in the band room in Macon, it's not a big room. It's a very unimpressive room. It's not, you walk into some people's band rooms, and you go, oh my goodness, wow, what a beautiful facility. Oh, you would walk in the Macon band room, Jamie Baker, who's there now, it's a terrible looking place. It was not a pretty band room. It's awful. It's just yike. And we didn't have place to have, the cafeteria was a place where we go for, to move the band into sectional rehearsals. Or to, when we have sectional rehearsals before school, sometimes we rearrange teachers' classrooms and then go back to the band room. It was just, we just didn't have facility. But with that, looking back, my point was we had control of of what was taught, and that's key. Having 5th grade band, 6th grade band, 7th grade band, 8th grade band, and having control of that. What is taught, what's important, how you discipline yourself in rehearsal. That's really so important. From all the conference bands and district bands, honor bands that we've conducted. Some students know how to behave in rehearsal. Some people they don't have a clue. They don't know how to, And it's a very frustrating time many times in honor bands because people don't know how to behave, don't know how to rehearse. And it gets more frustrating as the day goes on because they
Yeah.
just plain don't know how to, what proper rehearsal etiquette is. So that's taught. Having that control is important. Having jazz ensemble during the day, as education requirements increased,
Yeah.
that became less successful, became smaller. But during the best day, oh, it was phenomenal because you had rehearsal every day with those kids.
Oh, I can remember in high school hearing your jazz band up at Kirksville, and yeah.
And so that was a true luxury. Marching band was probably we became a pretty good marching band, but it was never my first love. Some folks, they really love marching band. That's probably their first love of the
Right.
big performance ensembles, and then concert band, jazz ensemble, okay, but really marching band is what they really love to do. Mine was just the opposite. Concert band is what I really love to do.
Yeah.
Jazz ensemble would be probably second, and then marching band was down here. And then as we got better at marching band, I became better at teaching it and better at how to do it. But that was never my first love. Yeah.
Right.
Curriculum, we just, with the younger bands, method books and pieces. We would
Did you have
have
certain training pieces that you did every year, or did you
it
just look?
varied. It varied. We tried to coordinate them with the book we were using. Beginner, I think pretty much standard. People use a method book and maybe one or two little pieces, but I think that's pretty safe. You don't
Mhm.
focus on, full band pieces.
Yeah.
But typically the rehearsal would be book and then work on the piece. We'd have tryouts each week, and probably I'd continue to do that if I were going back to it today. I really wouldn't change that much. About the only thing I think I would change a little bit more technology.
Yeah.
You're able to use your time a little more efficiently. Some of the tryouts and that type of playing tests that could be done virtually. You wouldn't need to. They could record that and send it to you. We didn't
So
use
would
use that at that time.
every week then, did you have chair order? Would that
Yeah,
rotate?
we
Or
did. We
yeah.
did. And we took some grief from that from some of our principals, some of the classroom teachers. And we said, well, we're preparing these kids for the real world. And I'm sorry if you don't like it, but that's the way we're going to do it because, if they are playing a solo at state festival or they're auditioning for a position in one of these honor bands, they have to be able to stand up on their own 2 feet and perform under pressure. And that's what we're trying to help them learn. Or if they're arguing a case in front of a judge and they're a lawyer or they're a doctor performing heart surgery. This is rather the real world. And I really haven't changed my opinion on that. So I love those elementary teachers, but we just disagreed on that. Yeah.
Right. Talk about how you you talked about one, I think 94, you said you had 10 all-staters. How did you use the all-district, all-state program to help your kids improve as individual players? Did all of your students play that material, or was it just ones who wanted to, or?
You ask that question. No.
I'm talking about in particular, the all-state etudes and the packet, the scale requirements.
Right.
Those were kind of a curriculum for private study.
Well, most of those private students, matter of fact, all those students that are trying out for district band or all-state band, they were private students, either with whether it be Gerald and me or Paul and myself or Brian and I. We would help them with that material, and we would see them. It wasn't just we'd give it to them and check on them every couple of weeks. Each week, we would help them with that material. The actual the rest of the material that, the materials that we were going to play, the program we played at MMEA, we would cover that in sectional rehearsals. That wouldn't be a part of we'd never bring that up in
Right.
private lessons. No.
Did you utilize, you having Truman State or Northeast at the time, I'm sure, did you utilize a lot of the talent up there? Did you bring college kids down to Macon to work with your kids, or?
Not as much as we should have. We used Truman primarily for, a case of Truman. We used, it was this era right in where we had all state percussionists. You may know now named Dr. Tim Oliver, who's the director of bands at University of Northern Arkansas State, excuse me, at Jonesboro. Well, he was my percussion instructor, and so he would, I think it was his junior year through a couple of years of grad school, so it's 4 or 5 years in there, and he was a marvelous teacher then, a marvelous teacher, very methodical, very, very careful, and he would have my son and others. I mean, it wasn't just Ryan was a wonderful drummer, percussionist. So were his buddies,
Yeah.
And he helped them develop their talents and worked with them on so many things. I go on and on and on, but Tim was probably the best case. But Kirby Spade, who's now as I would say, Willard. I've got the wrong school, but
I'm not sure, to be honest. I know he was in Odessa for a while.
He and Cam Henson talked together for years. But that
utilizing the talent of people around you is the key, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, you've talked several times about Macon being, and I know Macon well, it's a rural community. It's kind of out in the middle of what a lot of people would say is nowhere. And yet you created this culture of excellence, introducing students, farm kids, young kids to music at an extremely high level. I'm sure that took time to create, but what would you say is probably the key to your creating that outstanding culture of excellence at Macon? If you could pinpoint it to one thing or a couple.
When I was looking over some notes, and it came together toward the end of my career. I guess I'm not sure I did that much differently. But I started, I went, I had a very good friend. His name is Sam Collier. And Sam grew up in Shelbina and I grew up in Shelbyville. And we really never knew each other that well. We attended Central Methodist at the same time, but we were in different cliques. Sometimes he'd ride back and forth about going back home. He taught for a short time at Glasgow and then got into the restaurant industry and had he was in the restaurant industry in Columbia. Well, anyway, when I go visit him from time to time, walk in his house, and he'd have this bird dog that would come up, and he would say, "Bennett, this is such," whatever the dog's name was, and he said, "That's the world's best dog, by the way," and the dog would almost go. He said, "Now go sit down, behave yourself. Bennett and I are talking." Okay. Well, I went, and there's something in my brain went, So you respect that person or that dog, and they sense the respect. So I came back, after a weekend of, thinking this through, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to change something." And I told them the story about world's best bird dog. I said, "World best dog. We're going to paraphrase. It's going to be the world's best band." And if you'd see the blackboard at that time, or the whiteboard, it said WBB, world's best band. And every morning. And I said, "You think I'm kidding, don't you?" said, I'm not kidding. In my mind, you're the world's best band. And we're going to work to make sure that you are one of the world's best bands.
Yeah.
And we approached it that way. And one thing that there was a Sandbothyism that stayed, goes right along with that. When you walk in, their doors on either side of the band room, and they had a full-length mirror on them. And above those full-length mirrors, as you walk in, of course, you could see yourself, of course. And it said, and there was a little hand-lettered sign that Sandbothy had put up there, and it said, "You are looking at the most important person in the world." And I remember the impact was greater than we ever realized.
Yeah.
Those two, and now the students may say other things, but as I look over at those two things, expecting them to be, like as that, they wouldn't appreciate the dog perhaps, but expecting them to be, behave and conduct themselves and prepare themselves as one of the best in the world. And also how important you are, you have the ability to make the choices that what you're going to do with your life. And so, and they've done everything. They are doctors, they are lawyers, they are accountants,
and the lessons they learned in band.
They're pastors. They're doing everything.
Yeah.
And
the lessons they learned from you in band and that culture has informed everything they've done, I'm sure.
Hopefully we had our part in it. We didn't do the work, but we helped them understand the part of this culture. Maybe I learned a little bit of that in band. I hope so, we made our contribution anyway. Hopefully.
What a gift that was to the people of Macon. Would you say that over the years, a lot of your former students have returned to Macon to live their lives, or is it, has that changed over the years, or?
Regrettably, not a lot. The folks that have, and we want to be careful that we respect what everybody does. But if you're practicing law, chances are you're not going to come back to Macon.
Sure.
Doctors, we've had docs that have come back, but then they've stayed a short time and moved on. That are judges, etc. Just up and down the line. These people that are achieving at that level, typically they come back to visit, but they don't come back, and this is not where they make their this is where they stay. But a few.
You're one of the few,
not as much.
You're one of the few people who would have experienced such a high level of success teaching in the public schools, but also now for all these years being involved in teaching teachers at Central and for that time at Mizzou. What's changed about being a band director now compared to during the bulk of your career? Or do we have time for that? No, I'm joking.
Well,
what are some of the big changes?
I think when I was a kid, and I can remember, the name will come back. I mentioned early on in our conversation, a fellow named John Seaburn that spent his career, with whom I did my student teaching. He was also the trombone soloist that I mentioned when I was a high school kid. He was a trombone soloist that played Bluebells of Scotland and just nailed it. I mean, just killing it. And John was a wonderful section leader and a wonderful mentor to me, as when I was a young man in college. Well, anyway, I got off my train of thought. You were talking about
students, teachers nowadays. What might be different for them?
And he was my pledge father when I pledged Phi Mu Alpha Sinfonia. So even before that time, he became one of my mentors, and we would go to his dorm room, and he said, "Now, Bennett, I want you to get some of these sounds in your head. This is the Eastman Wind Ensemble. This is the Michigan Band. the director here, this is Dr. Ravelli. He's feared, but he's a great director. You need to learn. This is how a band should sound. We listen to Eastman. This is how a band should sound. And he would talk about how this is reinforced with what Mr. Seward was doing in band. See this organ concept, you hear the bass, you hear all of those colors. This should be very colorful. So you need to get that in your head, son, because that's the way what you need to work on when you get out of school. I'm not sure a lot of that. I don't think that's taking place. In my conversations with students, do you listen to, and they may listen more than I realize, but I don't think we're doing a lot of listening to how does a band sound? Have you want to be a band director? What's your favorite concert band?
Yeah. Isn't that interesting too, Larry, to think about that? And I know that is true in the era of YouTube videos, and it's so available. It's so easy to listen to. It used to be, you had to have those albums or go into the reference library and dig those albums out. And now you can just listen to it on your phone, and yet in your experience, there's less listening going on.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
That's what I see. Or a student, you'd have a low brass student in preparing a recital. Did you listen to such and such play this piece? No. It's on YouTube. Go to YouTube. I mean, it's so accessible.
Yeah.
I mean, if a technologically idiot person like I can do this, I mean, holy cow. Just go to YouTube, listen to this performance. It's fabulous. Listen, that gives you somewhere to this is where I'm trying to go with you, if you allow me. This is what I want. This is what I'm hearing in my head when you play.
Yeah.
Sometimes even after all of that, they did you listen to that? Well, no.
Yeah. Without that model, without that oral model, how do they know what they want it to sound like?
Sure.
Wow.
I used to do that with the pieces we take to festival. I would try to find the best recording I could find of that piece. A lot of those I would find on Arnold Gabriel's recordings with the Air Force Band. I worked with him a little bit at band camps when he would come to Truman or Northeast, and I just idolized him. I'd never been around a conductor with a mastery, the skill. I mean, the memorization of
everything
scores.
memorized.
I just blew my mind. I mean, you're a Shelbyville farm kid seeing this. I mean, just holy cow! How do you do that? My word.
And it wasn't just how to conduct it, but it was, I can remember in the Allstate Band, he conducted the Allstate Band my senior year, and we were doing the whole second suite. And in rehearsal, he would say, horns, that concert F, just unbelievable mastery of the mind. Just. And
we would, I asked him once, Colonel Gabriel, I mean, that's phenomenal that you have all this memorized. And he said, well, this is how you do it. But he really is not one of these gregarious, life of the party kind of guys that goes out and parties and talks. No, I mean, you almost have to pull it out of him. But in one of his few moments where he actually said something, it was like a break. He said, well, I'll be honest with you. Most of that has to do with vanity. I hate to wear glasses.
That's what it boils down to.
And he said right along with it, when you're doing an all-state group, he said they don't pay attention. They don't respect the person on the podium. So and I said, oh, now, Colonel Gabriel, he said, oh, some groups, I think he named New York. They love that. The New Yorkers will love that comment. But he said, they don't respect anybody. He said, so when you don't want to have your head in the score looking down, said you want to have everybody's eye. If somebody misbehaves, you're right on them. So that's why it's all here. It's one,
Wow.
the glasses. I think somebody else told me about the glasses. I don't think he told me about that, but he did tell me the New York story. So
Oh,
I'll have to ask
um,
Colonel Will.
one of the one of the
But he,
great
but phenomenal, and graceful and powerful and everything on the conducting was just, oh my word, just world class.
other than hearing your bands, which always was exciting and so musical. I know that the music touches you in a very real and powerful way. One of my favorite memories, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but we were in the all-state band rehearsal, and I happened to be standing back next to you. We were right up next to the tubas, and Anthony Maiello was conducting 12 Seconds to the Moon. And he was rehearsing some big, fabulous moment in that piece. And you turned and looked at me, and we both just tears. It was just, and I thought, what else do you want to do with your life but this?
Right.
What a gift. What a gift.
That was the whole idea is trying to open students' minds to the possibility of, the power that music has, how it helps us. We go to movies to, a great movie pulls us out, we leave the planet for a while. We get into that character and it transports us to another world. Well, a great musical performance is the same thing. It helps us through these, and my God, if we need, in these times in which we're living right now, it's just yike. This can be, can help us cope. And hopefully people are doing some listening. People are, enjoying, or playing, or whatever contribution. Hopefully it helps them get to that point.
The gift and the power of the music is something. I mean, you still perform, you still play your trombone with the trombone quartet.
Not as much as I was. One thing that I looked forward when I was teaching at Central, I retired from my job at Central, but we'd formed a trombone quartet, and I probably enjoyed that more than the students did. But it was me trying to keep up with the youngsters. I enjoyed that thoroughly. And then I have a little it's four horns and rhythm section. We call ourselves Just Friends, and it's kind of signature tunes, a lot of big band tunes that have been shrunk down, and we'll play fairs and get-togethers and anniversaries and that kind of thing around. And a lot of those folks are former students, and friends. That's why we call ourselves Just Friends. So it's that's a lot of fun too.
I have to tell you, in this hour, if I have learned so much just by visiting with you. It makes me want to go teach again. Of course, most days I want to teach again, that's for sure. But if you had one piece of your gold nugget advice for a teacher entering the field right now, can you share what would be your best advice?
When I first graduated, I admired, I had some of these great teachers, years ago, because I had Kenny Seward, and a lot of folks don't know who that is anymore.
Oh boy, they should.
Oh my goodness, he was kind of a love him or hate him. I mean, there's no in between. I loved him because he woke me up and said, Bennett, if you're going to do this, you need to get busy and he gave me a model of rehearsal techniques every time I went to the band rehearsal.
Yeah.
I had Joe Labuda, I had Paul Montemurro, I had some great teachers. But when I was out, I remember, I don't remember who told me this, but it's exactly right. You will start being, you'll start teaching like some of those people you admire. It could have been a high school director. It could have been a college director, and you'll try to emulate them. And then slowly you develop your own style. And so that would be my suggestion to students. I don't think there's anything wrong whatsoever with imitating. Let's take, for instance, a young person that went to Central Methodist that tries to emulate Skip Van Lip.
You could do a lot
worse than that. I mean, he's a great guy and a great teacher. I mean, he does many things beautifully. You know, it'd be fun to watch him because I pick up things about how he did something. You really did that well, man. That was cool. That you really taught that really well. So how he would rehearse and the things he would say, very good. But you also slowly develop your own style. So don't be afraid to develop your own style, because you need to be true to yourself, I think is what I'm trying to say. Be true to yourself. Be that person and go with your instincts, because usually those instincts are pretty good. But
that's great advice, and advice that gives someone entering the field confidence, which is the gift you gave your students all these years, confidence that they were important and what they were going to do mattered. And this has been a pleasure, Larry.
Well, thank you.
I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and I know it will be a gift to anyone who listens to it.
You've been listening to MBA Podium Masters. Your host has been Ann Goodman-Clark. I'm Ray Benton, Technology and Media Specialist with Nottleman Music in St. Louis, assisting with this series. We invite you to enjoy these informative conversations as we continue to promote MBA's core value, building better bands throughout our great state.